Over the past 2 years, conflict has been more widespread than at any time since the end of the Cold War, according to the Conflict Data Program at the University of Uppsala. We see human pain and suffering in the news from Europe to Africa, from Central Asia to the Middle East. War also has important economic implications. That said, global economic output has held up slightly better than expected, with some major markets appearing to be on track for a soft landing, like the United States. But prospects in many places are less bright. Earlier this month came news of technical recessions in some advanced economies in Europe. Many developing economies are weighed down by debt distress, high financing costs, real estate crises like in China, and other issues. Although inflation has been falling, higher prices for food, energy, fertilizer, and other essentials are fueling cost of living concerns and political anger. These will be felt at the polls when countries home to nearly half of the world's population hold elections this year. Global trade has been something of a resilient spot, as I said to ministers at Monday's opening. Despite all the shocks and political pressures of recent years, world's goods and services trade remains resilient and in value terms close to record highs. On the diplomatic front too, trade has offered some rare victories for multilateral cooperation. Our last ministerial in June 2022, MC12, was a remarkable success as members came together across geopolitical and other differences to deliver results for people and the planet. Some parts of global trade have been flourishing. To take a few examples, preliminary data for the first 3 quarters of 2023 suggests that global services trade grew 9% year-on-year in value terms, even as goods trade contracted. Looking further back, global exports of services delivered digitally via computer networks have more than tripled since 2005. They were worth $3.82 trillion in 2022, or 12% of total goods and services trade. Trade in environmental goods like wind turbines, solar panels, and air pollution control equipment has more than tripled since 2000 to reach a record $1.9 trillion in 2022. The Plurilateral Information Technology Agreement at the WTO has removed tariffs on roughly $3 trillion worth of annual trade in goods like servers, computers, mobile phones that help to power AI and the digital economy. Open international markets have been a vital shock absorber, helping businesses, households, and economies cope with one crisis after another. Now, for the other side of the coin, trade and the trading system on which many of your businesses rely faces multiple threats. In the immediate term, the shipping disruptions in the Red Sea and the Panama Canal remind us how security challenges and the climate crisis can directly impact trade growth and inflationary pressures. These problems, together with slowing growth, mean that global merchandise trade volumes in 2023 probably expanded by less than the 0.8% we had projected last October. And with so many downside risks, the 3.3% trade growth we had forecast for this year is likely to be downgraded as well. We are working on new forecasts which should be out in March, April. A longer-term threat is the fact that trade has become a 4-letter word instead of 5 letters in many quarters, scapegoated for all manner of ills. The rules-based trading system, a global public good since it was created 75 years ago, continues to be misconstrued in some quarters. This could open the door to dramatic and costly changes in the way the global economy operates, not least because the WTO still plays a major role in underpinning global trade. Over 3/4 of the nearly $70 billion worth of goods that cross borders every day, are traded under WTO's most favored nation tariff terms.
Everyone talks about inflection points. Everyone talks about this is the crucial moment. Everyone says this is the time when we must decide to make a difference. But the fact is, a few things are coalescing to make this particular ministerial meeting very, very important. We want, from the business community, and we have spent a lot of time at the ICC crowding in the views from the more than 170 business communities, 170 countries that actually comprise the ICC, about what we want to see. We want to see a functioning multilateral trading system for the very reasons Dr. Ngozi said. Frankly, accountable, transparent, predictable, multilateral system is certainly much preferable to a power-based system from a business perspective. We want to be able to trade across borders and know what the rules are, ensure they're transparent, and we want accountability from those who reach agreements to ensure that we actually get what's been promised. This is very important. We know that without the WTO, we will see an erosion of trade flows, and we know that, for example, when you even talk about the inclusiveness of trade, that without a WTO, we would see a massive downturn in trade flows in developing and emerging economies, something like 40% in Africa, something like 40% in South Asia, something almost near 30%, JP, in Latin America. The consequences of not ensuring that the WTO continues to function are actually real. The erosion of the WTO does not come without a cost. And frankly, it's in the interest of the global world, the North, the South, the advanced economies, the developing and emerging economies, to recognize that risk. And we, as the business community, have certainly done so, and that's why we're here today. Can I also say it's a great privilege to be with the Minister today, the chair of MC13. One thing that the Minister and I have discussed over the last little while is actually the importance of ensuring a successful outcome. And for us then, what does a successful outcome look like at MC13? It's not that complicated. We want a reaffirmation of the guiding principles that actually underpin the multilateral trading system. We talked about it, I just talked about it before. Clarity, predictability, certainty, all those elements. That's what was agreed to in Marrakesh when everyone got together. And people forget that in Marrakesh, we also agreed to sustainable trade. And that's why linking up those vectors of trade and climate is an important piece that must come out of this discussion as well. The other element, which is really the optique, I think, through which the business community will judge success or failure, be whether or not the members present in the negotiating rooms understand the importance of the digital economy and enabling that, not disabling that. And that's why it's so important for the moratorium on the e-commerce tariffs to actually be reaffirmed and, frankly, to be made permanent. That's the outcome. We know that there is some traditional horse trading, hostage taking on this, but this is too important to play with. Because the reality is, if you want to see e-commerce, if you want to see the digital economy prosper, a fundamental building block is you don't put tariffs on it. And for the WTO at this meeting to reverse its principle, which is to actually open borders and put tariffs on a functioning part of the global economy which is driving growth, would be a massive statement of no confidence in the principles that actually drive the WTO itself. So we do call that, and that's why it's so good to have so many members of the business community here, and also having engaged in key capitals to actually develop it. The DG mentioned dispute resolution. We also talk in the same breath about the complexity of the geopolitical situation which we find ourselves in. We know that during the course of the year there's something like 60 elections. We know that there's going to be pandering to populist policies. We know that there are conflicts that will emerge. We do not want them existing without the capacity to actually bring them, particularly when they relate to trade, to a forum in which it's possible to resolve disputes without resorting to power and to a tariff war. So it's really important for the members to understand this is not an arcane issue. The risk of disputes being unable to be resolved can lead to a further unwinding of the multilateral trading system and the outcomes we describe. So it's an important, pivotal, incisive moment, an inflection point, and justly described as such. So I actually call out again to the business community to continue to reaffirm the importance of the multilateral trading system, the importance to have a functioning WTO and the support it needs to get there, and actually to endorse a continuing leadership of Dr. Ngozi and the support and the leadership of our chair, the Minister, here today.
The agreements reached by delegations this week will shape trading realities for millions of companies, their suppliers, and their customers. That is the responsibility none of us should take lightly. Equally, however, there is a responsibility on the business community to be clear, forthright, and detailed with their national representations. No effective policy can be made without the input of the people. Its impacts day in and day out. Meetings such as this are an important part of the ongoing dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, we continue to hear that globalization is in decline. The evidence seems to point the contrary, but we can't take nothing for granted. There are economic challenges that governments across the world are facing. They are balancing the need of economic growth and diversification with the new realities of climate change and net zero. We have to accept some of these may bring friction with trading partners or with the trading system itself. Combating climate change or protecting national interests are not incompatible with rule-based trade. The system provides plenty of flexibility to pursue these goals and to do so in a way that minimally harms the trade of the others. However, if leaders want to reform the trading system to better accommodate them, they need to know how it will affect the businesses. It is imperative that trade policy community sees that businesses are focused on both individual WTO issues and the system as a whole. Over the course of this morning, you will hear plenary's discussion on many of the WTO matters, the importance of renewing moratoriums, how trade can be better incorporate sustainability, and how WTO reform could look like. And these are areas where we need to be loud. We have clear voice from the business community. Sustainability and digital are emerging fields. These and their interactions with the trade policy are only just being formulated. To get this right, the business community needs to articulate the reality of the ground and potential impact of the market intervention. We have already heard you on the importance of renewing the moratorium of the e-commerce. We accept that this is absolutely a top priority for the private sector, and members know that this is a key outcome. It is worth noting again that founding principles of WTO is that tariff reduction is beneficial. In the decades since the WTO was founded, its rewarded are clear. If members allow tariffs to rise in an area where none exist, this is contrary to their spirit. WTO reform is a complex project requiring the governments to assess how changes today might impact their interest tomorrow and the near future. We, members, also need to consider how the private sector can be more meaningfully engaged in the work of the WTO on the ongoing basis. And the Director General, Dr. Ngozi, and I remain optimistic that MC13 will deliver a range of outcomes.